Good morning. Today is Sunday, October 6th, 2024. Let's begin by setting our intentions, making aspirations as we begin our any Buddhist practice. This is always the first part of it. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from the happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. And remember, when we say this, it's called the Four Immeasurables prayer. We're not saying it just as some very pie in the sky, wishful thinking kind of thing. It's really important to remember that that prayer and that intention is directly connected to the view of Buddhism, which ultimately, one aspect, very important aspect of it is interconnectedness, and that the ultimate nature of reality is that we are not separate beings and just these individuals kind of on an island disconnected from everything else, that our true nature is interdependence and non-duality. So making that aspiration, if you also think about it as relating to the true state of things, when you're saying may all beings, it includes yourself, but it also just really describes the nature of reality as this oneness. It's very tall order to kind of wrap your head around, but it's good to start to think of it that way and not just as this isolated, wish or something, you know what I mean? That it's connected to the view of Buddhism. We always have to go back to the view of Buddhism, about impermanence, interdependence, shunyata, which is also translated as emptiness, which really describes the fact that, nothing is inherent in itself. There's no self that exists inherently on its own. That's a delusion and a very deluded subjective point of view, that we exist apart from anything, that there's this self-existing, totally independent self, that wholeness, that interdependence, that non-duality is really the nature of reality, which is ever in flux and shifting all the time. You have to remember those things. It's really important. Otherwise, otherwise you're not really practicing Buddhism. You could be practicing mindfulness and you could be practicing meditation, and those things are very good, and you can do calm abiding stuff. But without the view, you're not practicing Buddhism. It doesn't really exist without it. And the big marquee concepts of karma and reincarnation, the things that people get very fascinated by, I think, when you first approach Buddhism, those things can't be approached without the view of Buddhism again, without emptiness and without interdependence, without the idea that all emotions are pain, ultimately, that in life there's suffering, and the suffering is because of our deluded perception, basically, of being apart from this universal oneness. So the concept of reincarnation, which a lot of people get fascinated by or stuck on, that has to be approached. Well, what is being reincarnated? If the true nature of reality is non-duality, how do I fit into that picture? Important to remember. That's why we always have to start with the view of Buddhism. And the same thing with karma. We a lot of people look at karma as this very cosmic retribution system. But again, if you're looking at it through the lens of Buddhism and through the view of Buddhism, it's not just about you. Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche, who brought Buddhism to Tibet, said, my view is as vast as the sky, but my actions are as fine as a grain of sand. So the view is that vast, vast scope of non-duality, but our actions as individuals, our actions, we can't make actions that are constantly in connection with all other beings, besides like aspiration prayers or something like that. But our day-to-day interactions with other human beings, how we treat our partners, how we treat our children, how we go about our day in our workplace and stuff like that, is made up of these tiny actions, and sometimes big actions, but also often very subtle and very tiny, that basically create our karma. A lot of our karma has been created by prior actions in this life and past lives, right? But the future is created by this minute, action by action and presence by presence and moment by moment, that we, with awareness, have an opportunity to take into a different direction. Mindfulness and awareness, which we cultivate through meditation and through the practice of the Dharma and study of the Dharma and listen, and hearing the words of the Buddha and the lamas and the teachers. So it's important to remember that big picture. Like I said, otherwise you're not really practicing Buddhism. And you can be here and not worry about practicing Buddhism. You can be here, it's up to you, and just do the meditation and take what works or what you like and leave the rest. That's totally up to you. But for those of you who are Buddhists or who are interested in being Buddhists, or who are just have an interest in Buddhism, it's always important to remember the view. There's a lot of preconceived ideas about Buddhism. And remember, Buddhism is a living wisdom tradition that goes back 2,500 years. And it's still very present, and there are masters teaching this that have a direct connection to Buddha himself. These very authentic lineages, where the teachings have been preserved. People have given up their lives to preserve these teachings. People have made tremendous efforts to keep these teachings alive and available in the world today. And we have the benefit of having access to this living wisdom tradition. And why Victoria and I always say, keep going back to the source, find the authentic teachings and teachers who are still with us. Rather than, there's a lot of, in my stupid opinion, I guess, there's a lot of watered down, processed, easily digestible spirituality that seems like Buddhism, has elements of it, but why not go to the source? Why not plug right into that, lineage, that authentic lineage, and not, someone's kind of third-hand, watered down pop psychology, new agey, self-helpy thing. If it works, it works. That's up to you. But to me, the authentic lineages and teachings is so much more powerful, inspiring, and the proof is in the pudding, as they say. With that, let's meditate. 2 weeks ago we had a very detailed review. So all these classes are archived on Michael Imperioli Meditation on YouTube. So you can archive the last class and get the detailed review of our technique, but we don't do that every week because otherwise it would take up so much time. So today we're going to just go right into our sitting meditation practice. So you get in the posture. Just remember, the back is straight, the hips should be even or above the knees, relaxed but not slack, relaxed but attentive, like the guitar string, just enough tension to make a tone, but not so much tension where it's too stiff, and not too slack where it can't make a tone. Tilt the head down a little bit. We use our eyes open. Our gaze is relaxed. It's not out of focus. It's not intensely focused. It's just lightly, gaze is lightly resting on whatever is in front of us. We're breathing through our nose, unless we can't. Let's just take 3 deep breaths um, through the nose. Just to settle everything down. And let's begin. Back to the breath. Catch yourself thinking. Be aware that the key is to become aware that you're thinking. And when you're aware of it, go back to the breath. Focus on where the air is moving. You know, the nostrils meet the upper lip. Or just see that thought dissolving into the sky-like nature of mind, where it has arisen from and where it dissolves back into without a trace. Relax into that image of the sky-like nature of limitless, stainless, infinite mind, calm, peaceful, clear. Back to the breath. Notice the fact that you're thinking. When you do, notice the fact that you're thinking. Imagine that thought like a cloud that has arisen in the sky-like nature of your mind. Settle back into that clarity of mind, which is your true nature, your Buddha nature. It's always there and always accessible. Nothing can change, damage, stain that Buddha mind, that clarity of mind. It can only be obscured by our habitual tendencies, thoughts, and emotions, which are all temporary. And all are actually mind itself. It comes from the sky. It's of that nature anyway, once we recognize it. Okay. Just going back to what I was saying, think about this, right? How many people you see who are on TV or on the internet today or all those kind of things, who are, selling books about being in the present or mindfulness or awareness or things like that, these kind of pop culture and pop psychiatrists or wellness people or new age gurus. How many of them will be known in 2,500 years? Think about that. Probably none of them. Um, Last thing is a quick quote from Zonsar Khyentse Rinpoche, who is someone we always recommend his teachings and his books. Go to the website Solidago Productions, where you logged in. There's a list of teachers and books. Zonsar Khyentse is someone we recommend very highly. Becoming aware of how things change is a useful form of mind training. Letting go of all your attachment to planning, scheduling, and expectation will reduce your fear of death considerably. If during your life you have never experienced disappointment or failure, when you find yourself at death's door, you will be terrified. Of course, by then it will be too late for you to do anything for yourself. Becoming aware of how things change. Impermanence, right? That's from Rinpoche's book, Living is Dying, which is a really, really valuable one that you should all read. With that, Victoria's going to talk to us a bit.
I would like to just, touch upon a subject that's very difficult for me because I'm not a scholar and I don't really have this level of practice that's required to talk about the subject. But still, as practitioners, we have to think about it. I'd like to kind of like touch on the question of why do we meditate? What are we trying to get to? I mean, what is the purpose of meditation? As Michael mentioned, without the view, we are just, sitting down for some kind of an expectation. This is what Garchen Rinpoche calls nesting or resting. We sit down as Buddhist practitioners into meditation in order to rest the mind. But here is the caveat. What kind of mind do we rest? So in Buddhism, we always talk about the two truths, the relative and the absolute, because there is a relative level to everything, and then there's an absolute nature to everything. Often it's, as in when Michael leads meditation, the relative level is compared to the clouds, and the luminous cognitive nature, simple, what they call bare awareness, is the sky. So whether we have like a little pretty cloud in that sky, which is a pretty thought moving through the sky of awareness, or where we have an ugly cloud, or we have a whole tempest and we have hurricane and we don't see the sun, the sky's nature is not really touched by anything. So the nature of mind, of just this luminous, not luminous doesn't mean like there's a light bulb on. Luminous means the cognizant nature of our mind. It's not touched, and it is ever present. For anything even to appear to our eyes, for us to have an experience, that basic nature is always there. Whereas the cloud formations, mental formations, thoughts, emotions, feelings, judgments, all the kind of skies, the activity, so to say, of the mind is the relative level. And that's what we sit down to relax. Why do we sit down to relax? Why do we need meditation? Because nature of the mind, the true luminous nature, the basic nature of cognizance, the basic nature of awareness is beyond the reach of intellectual mind. It is beyond the reach of conceptual, dualistic, ego-grasping mind, that relative side of it. Now, it is beyond language, it is beyond label, it is beyond definition. So when we sit down to meditate, we are relaxing that active cloud maker little machine in order to understand and come into contact with this basic nature of cognizance, of awareness, of that luminosity, without which we are never. So whether we sleep or we're sick, we're depressed, we're happy, that basic nature is always there. The content changes, the little bubble makers making bubbles, and we can't blame the mind for being this monkey mind, that relative portion of, and in Buddhism, we have many, many, many names for the mind. So that relative mind, we call it yid, the intellectual mind. Uh, Awareness, the bare sky, whether clouds are moving through it or it's a clear, beautiful day, there's no clouds, that vast, infinite space within which all the little things arise or big things arise, that without which experience does not ever happen, the ever present, the never changing nature of sky like mind's nature, that mind we call Rigpa. We have different names. I mean, in Sanskrit, I think there are 20, 30 terms for mind. In Tibetan Buddhism, we have also many, many terms for mind. So that intellectual relative portion of the mind, we usually discuss it in terms of 8 consciousnesses. We don't need to get into it today. That's a whole big other, topic. Today, just want to kind of just, touch on why we sit to meditate. What is it? What is the object of meditation when we sit to meditate? The object of meditation is mind itself in Buddhist meditation. It's not, so what we're coming down is this yid, this intellectual, conceptual, dualistic mind, the mind that has subject and object. Me engaging with, I'm thinking about this is, pretty, this is so and so. In Buddhist proper meditation, we calm that baby mind down in order to really touch upon the basic nature of awareness, and that's called Rigpa. We don't need to know all the names and et cetera, et cetera. What we do need to have is the experience of when that label making machine we call mind, the intellectual mind, the conceptual mind, when that is calmed down and it's resting, it's the only time we can touch that luminous nature of cognizance, which cannot be touched through language or label or activity or etc. And again, it's not to denigrate that relative mind that engages with objects in the world. That is the nature, that is the play. It is the nature of that mind, that level of the mind, that level of experience, to engage with things, to label things, that kind of mind, when it's still very young, when we haven't really thought about, what the mind is, period. It's like a little label maker machine, where we stick labels on everything. This is a tree, this is a Michael, this is a Victoria, this is a that, this is a screen, this, and that label maker machine kind of gets out of control. And, the little labels in giant systems become philosophies, religions, this is my God, this is my religion, this is, it goes from like, this is my house, this is my city, this is my state, this is my country, this is my world, this is my planet, etc. These are label making systems. And what happens in these label making systems is once we label something, we kind of imprison it. So for example, we meet a person, and when we have an experience of that person as, a bad person, a negative person, and usually that has to do with because they didn't please us, they didn't give us what we want, they disturbed, our ego, they didn't respond in a way that we expected. Next time we meet that person, most likely we're not gonna experience that person again. We're just going to bring up the label again. That label mind, that little label sticker maker, what it does when it's very, very active and we haven't really begun practice, we haven't sat down to meditation and relaxed that label maker is like being inside the room with TVs, multiple TVs on a rerun where we regurgitate experiences and, we really don't make new ones. So think about, how we experience the world. On the other hand, and so that's called the relative mind and conceptual mind. And then we have an experience that's called wisdom. Wisdom is a non-conceptual, non-dual, non-verbal, non-label experience. That's why we meditate, to get into that vastness, that largeness. You know, in the beginning, of course, we're just like trying to like calm down, our senses and our label maker, what, it's called the sixth mind, the discerning mind. It's grouped together with the five senses, and that conceptual mind is, I'm sorry, the discerning mind is grouped together with our senses. Along with that arises the seventh mind, that is me. I exist. These are my experiences. And out of that, we have, out of the me mind, out of this, subject that deals with objects, without our notice, afflictions enter. I like this, I don't like this. This tree is beautiful, that tree is ugly. That person's good, that person's bad. He's like this, he's like, these kinds of things. And we are imprisoned in that cycle. And we think that that is all that there is to the mind. So in Buddhism, a huge distinction is made between wisdom and someone who's read gazillions and gazillions of books, who is a scholar. And wisdom is never a thing where 100 elephants carry the books that that person reads. Wisdom is actually the experience of that unfathomable, beyond label, beyond language, beyond anything in nature of mind and actually all things. That's why we sit down to experience it. And when we get up, hopefully we've had enough of that experience where we've relaxed that judgment mind, where we've relaxed that baby senses and label mind. When we attain a little bit of wisdom through practice, and wisdom is something that grows. As Buddhist practitioners, we have one single vow, and it's, to the sacred nature of all things. How do we get to the sacred nature of all things? We get to it by relaxing this little baby label mind. That label mind could be very broad and have gigantic systems, that it feels that it holds in control. It's, it could be so powerful that it says, oh, I know what this is, and I know what this is. For example, like when we look at our body and when we breathe, we say, well, we're breathing in oxygen. It's a gas. It's on table of contents. I'm breathing it through my lungs and my organs and this and this and this. Well, as Buddhist practitioners, we know that that's a baby mind that is encapsulated into a very big overarching system of labels that actually things are dead, things are, explicable, things are labelable and manipulable and controllable. We as practitioners get to a different level of experience when we relax that baby mind with all its labels and judgments and everything. We get to a level of mind, wisdom mind knows that it's a miracle that I breathe in this breath. I connect to everything through this breath. It's not just a gas to me as a practitioner. Every breath that I take is a kindness, is a compassion. And through each breath, I'm connected to everything. My body is also sacred. It's miraculous. It's unimaginable. It's not just a calculable mass of organs, blood, etc., labels. We start to have a different experience of everything. Wisdom is when we pick up a cup of tea and we don't say, that's a cup, that's the tea, that's the cup I like, that's the tea I like, it's mine. It's, we shift our experience from that silly thing, that silly mind, which is also has its place. It's like, it's because that relative mind tells us, don't eat that poisonous mushroom, your stomach will hurt. We need that. And that's the play of the mind, is nothing that we can blame or denigrate or discard. It is what happens. This is what our mind does. It engages with objects on a relative level, but we bring the ultimate understanding to it as well. So when we pick up a cup of tea with a tea that we like, we say, this cup connects me to thousands of people It connects me to people who make this cup. It connects me to nature that grew this tea, the hands that picked these tea leaves, the pipes that brought the water. I'm sitting in my beautiful home, that was also, compassion of others who build it for me. And even beyond that, we connect to view of the universe that says, these are all Buddha manifestations. How do Buddhas manifest into our universe? How do we connect to Buddhas? We connect to Buddhas because all the acts of giant compassion, Buddhas don't manifest only as human beings or living, beings, like our teachers, the Buddhas, historical Buddhas that we have followed, many, many beings besides Buddha Shakyamuni have attained enlightenment, and we follow them because they are the guides. They give us the map. But Buddhas also manifest, like in Shantideva's prayer, when he says, may I be the shade for those who are hot in the sun. May I be the water for those who are thirsty. May I be a bridge across the river for those who want to cross it. Buddhas manifest in all kinds of things. And so it is wisdom that picks up a cup of tea and understands it is wonderful. It connects me to all the things in the universe. Like, it connects me to all these countless beings and their compassion that I can have this cup of tea. But even beyond that, it connects us and we say, this cup of tea and this cup and the tea that I'm drinking is actually a manifestation of the Buddha, because the fact that I can have this and enjoy this is just this tremendous act. And so a lot of times when we sit as beginners, we connect to our breath. We take 26,000 breaths through the 24-hour cycle. That breath could be a breath of awareness or unawareness. What is a breath of unawareness? Is this, basic stupidity. I am here, this is mine, I know what this is. The act of ignorance and arrogance in one, solidified mess. Or wisdom. It could be the wisdom of knowing these things are impermanent. And, if it was a moment later, I may have not had this cup of tea. The cup could have broken, the tea may have not arrived, etc., etc. I may have not had the moment to sit down with this cup of tea. We have this awareness of impermanence. We have the awareness of interconnectedness, because all things arise in their interconnected manner. If not for all these beings who collected this tea, made this cup, built my house so I can sit on this floor, on this cushion, at the table, have my cup of tea, none of it would be possible. And we of course think of the empty nature. What is empty nature? It is the state of the mind or state of being from which everything arises. It's not like space is just filled with stuff, from beginning to end, and these things just linger and never, disintegrate. No, we understand that it is a play of Dharmakaya, of the nature of reality. Things arise and they go back into it, like sky and clouds, and that I can sit here with this cup and drink this cup of tea, or breathe in this breath, have life, and then I can go out and do compassionate activities as a result of my body, of my heart beating, of my breath being sustained. I can comport myself in a certain way. I can have the intelligence of doing compassionate things, etc., etc. When we sit down to get to that level of mind, we can bring that state of mind to all things, because we breathe all the time. So on the breath, we remember I am connected to all things. It's actually very miraculous that I'm breathing right now, that I have the miracle of this breath. What if I didn't? What if my next breath is not available to me? It doesn't help. The labels don't help that, oxygen is a gas. It's on this, table of, gases. It's, none of that actually explains or gives an understanding of why I'm getting my next breath, of why I'm here, of why I'm holding a cup of tea. So when we practice, the signs of practice become that level of awareness. It's a relaxed mind. By relaxed, what do we relax? We relax this, I know everything, I got it in my grasp. This is a gas, this is a cup, this is a me, I live in the city. We relax all that stuff into kind of like the miracle of all things, because it's kind of mind blowing that I'm here, breathing, holding a cup of tea, etc., etc. It's also mind blowing the compassion that it takes to give me this cup of tea, or the compassion of the universe that this element of air is nourishing my body and still allowing it to be. In Buddhism, by the way, that sacred view of all things. Uh, that's why we don't distinguish when we have violence against our own body or against someone else, because if we kill ourselves through act of hatred, or we kill someone else, is not really distinguished. It's still an act of hatred. It's just because we don't understand the sacred nature of all things. And that's why we sit down to meditate. In meditation, we start to feel those kinds of things. We're in touch with that silent, infinite beauty that is always present. We call it Dharmakaya, we call it the nature of mind, we call it luminosity, emptiness. We have lots and lots of, names for it. We need names to be able to communicate, but we relax them and we're very chill about them when we come into life. Like Guru Rinpoche said, my view is as vast as the sky, my conduct is as fine as the barley flour. It's so little that it's even smaller than the grain of sand. It's like you blow into it and it just, uh, becomes one with air, with space, etc., etc. The signs of practice are that the mind becomes very relaxed, judgment becomes very relaxed. We can experience thing each time as new. And actually in Buddhism, there's a word for that mind that experiences things for the first time. It's called sem. And all of us are actually sem chen, beings who are capable of that sem mind. It's like possessors of that mind that can experience. But that experience is different than the intellectual mind of labels, the regurgitated rerun that we are in, the intellectual mind of this ego. I know what it is and I know that it is. That's the first pollution, is to think that I am. And the second thing, the pollution, is that I know what I am and that I know what things are. Those are the two obscurations that we, remember too. We are not trying to make our mind good. Our mind is already always good. Our mind is Buddha nature. Wherever there is a mind, there is Buddha nature. What we're doing through practice is trying to remember that, trying to find that again. And it's not a verbal experience, not a conceptual experience. It's when all the verbal and, that label mind slows, shuts down and becomes silent. That's when we can see the sky. And that's why we sit to meditate. The signs that we're meditating and that we have progress, that our practice is blossoming, is not that I am this big scholar. I've read so many books on Buddhism. I'm so smart and you're so dumb, and etc., etc. I know so much. It's actually the opposite. It's the signs that we are progressing, is that wisdom is guiding us, meaning that we are working with our heart in this big openness. We are very accepting of the things that we meet. We experience things very freshly. It's not a regurgitated experience. Oh, I know what this is. That guy is bad, every time that guy enters the room or whatever, or I don't like these things, because that's a regurgitated experience. I like this, I don't like this, and I don't know this, the three kind of labels that we usually have, like, dislike, and that what they call the neutral experience is actually just experience of ignorance, So watch for the signs, watch how your mind operates in the world. Is your mind kind of like aware of the spaciousness of its nature while activity is happening? Is your mind aware of the impermanent nature of these arisings? Does your mind know that when we're going through like a difficult time, we know it's temporary and that it's our karma when we're going through it? And so we relax, we let the experience take place without getting insane, without getting out of control. Uh, do we experience the world as a sacred place? Do we experience objects in the world as sacred? Do we experience others and remember they all have sacred nature? You know, we are only here, like if we ask a question, why are we here? The teachers and the teachings are very exacting on that. They say we're here to ripen. We're not here to be punished. We're just here to grow up. So, you know, when the teachers and the teaching say, ignorance is an impure vision and wisdom is a pure vision, it only has to do with how the mind sees things. So the mind that doesn't know the sacred nature of all things is an impure vision. Why? Because it's not aware of the nature of things. It's not bad or good, it's just unaware of the sacred nature of all things. And the pure mind is, the Buddha mind that is aware of the true reality of it has a relative and absolute truth as a unity. And so it never lets the monkey mind, the relative mind, kind of be the dominant force. The relative mind is always wrapped in the absolute understanding of the nature of things. So when things happen, difficult, painful, it's experienced with the same, like the sun shining on all things does not discriminate. I'm going to shine on this guy that I like, and I'm not going to shine on this guy I don't like. I'm going to give warmth here, but not here. That's how we know, our teachers are Buddhas, because when we see a person capable of loving all beings without judgment, then we know that's the ripeness, that's the pure vision. Because teachers don't see us good and bad, they just see us like green seedlings or ripened flowers. That's it. There's no good and bad. It's just like going from the seed to the full blossoming of the mind. And the last thing that I want to say, when we make this aspiration, may all beings have happiness, etc. Actually, for us as Vajrayana practitioners, our first prayer is, may I free all sentient beings. It is also the aspiration with which we start practice each and every time. If we do not sit to practice with, say, I want to attain enlightenment to liberate all beings, then we're not Buddhist practitioners. And this is the last thing with which I want to finish is, what do we liberate all sentient beings from? We liberate all sentient beings from our relative ego-driven judgmental mind. We liberate all sentient beings not from the fire and famine and this and this and that. That we can also do, but we liberate all sentient beings from our own self-grasping mind. We liberate all sentient beings from judgments and tensions and labels and things like that. So please practice and watch your mind. Sit to practice with the right determination, and then dedicate all the merits of practice for the sake of all sentient beings' enlightenment. And remember why we sit down to practice. Do it with the right aspiration, and then bring that experience. The more you can sustain that experience of openness, also what we call emptiness is just a mind without fixation. It's not like empty space without anything in it. It's mind awareness without fixation. That's a kind of a openness where anything can arise and dissolve. The relative play is always ongoing. There's always like the absolute awareness is like the stage, and the relative is, the play that's happening in it all the time. Different actors, different plays, different things. With a relaxed mind, we walk into life, and because we understand the sacred nature of all things, compassion is something that is always, always present. And remember, all beautiful things that surround us are manifestations of Buddhas into our life. You know, every breath could be connecting to that sacred energy.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to questions. There's a Q&A toolbar on the Zoom, and you can ask questions there. When your life gets busier than usual, do you notice an impact on your practice, meditation practice? Is there anything you do differently or in addition during these times? You know, when your life is busy, you have to first acknowledge that your life is busy, which is really important, because busy is often kind of very normalized and normal state. Busy is often perceived as something good, you know, it means you're working or you're making money or you're being engaged in something that's important or that you like. So, you know, there could be a positive thing, there could be a negative thing because you're too busy and you can't tend to mental and physical health, or, you know, simple things that make you happy. So the first thing is acknowledge that you're busy and become aware, because it's easy to be busy and not be aware of it. And when you're aware that you're busy, you know, to make sure that you make an effort to practice or to read, or just to kind of, you know, it's important during your day to find moments where you settle into awareness, you know. I read this quote by Lama Zopa Rinpoche the other day, and he basically just said, and I've tried to find it and I couldn't, but I'm going to paraphrase it to the best of my memory. It's basically saying, if you really are able to engage in true awareness in every moment, enlightenment is not far away from that. Enlightenment follows very naturally from that. Sounds extremely simple. Not extremely, you know, often the most simple things are the most difficult and not easy. But it's important to find those moments, you know, to become aware. And it can be in the midst of being busy, you know, it could be at work, it could be en route to work on the train or in the car or something like that, or in the midst of traffic, or, you know, conflict or difficulties, anxiety about, you know, being busy or work or workload, or starting things. And it's easier said than done. And I speak from very recent experience in that, you know, where the emotions take over and the body gets affected and all those things. And it's hard to really kind of see, you know, the forest from the trees. Let's take a step out of it. That's you know, that's habitual stuff, often karmic things. And when you're in the grips of that, it's important to see when you come out of that, because you will come out of it. And when you come out of it, you look at it and say, wow, you know, that day I just was consumed by this worry and anxiety and busyness and fear, and I really I didn't have the ability to step out of it. But look at it now, it's lifted, meaning, you know, it was completely in a perception of my own mind at a situation that now is the same situation, but I'm seeing from a different angle and I'm having a completely different experience of. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my opinion,
Please.
of course.
I just want to say, you know, be busy, but don't be lost. Check your mind all the time. You know, do it with the breath. Just breathe in and check your mind, the quality of energy of your mind, quality and energy of your speech and your activity, you know, body, speech, and mind. Breathe in and understand kind of like the bigger picture, the small picture, the clouds, and connect to the mind. That will help you act in the right way and speak in the right way. You know, your body will perform the right way and your speech will become the right way. try to do it through the whole day. I mean, in the beginning, when we used to just, when we just started practice, I'd set my alarm for every, half hour or whatever. Just when the alarm would ring, it would be like a trigger, become aware. Because awareness in both Sanskrit and Tibetan, in Tibetan it's Dramba, and in Sanskrit it's Smriti. It means remembering. Just remember on your breath, go back to like, what is happening? What am I? What is all this? Just remember, go back to like awareness of nature, of the mind's nature and of nature of all things, and just relax that whole, being lost in projections outside. Very, very important. Turn the mind every so often, every hour, a couple of times an hour, turn your mind inward. Look at the quality of mind, not just engage with things outside, but turn the mind inward for a moment, for a breath, and just catch it back again, so that the important thing is not to be lost in projections all day long, because that's a wasted day. When we are engaging in life, but we maintain awareness, it changes everything, and we don't lose awareness. You know how like sometimes we're so lost all day long in projections and labels, and this is good, this is bad, I hate this. You come home and we're so exhausted, and we feel like a day was just ripped away from us. But it doesn't have to be. We just have to come back a couple of times a day. If we're not sitting to a formal practice, just remember the mind's nature, remember the nature of reality, connect to everything, connect to yourself, use mind as an object instead of just like chasing stuff outside all the time. Mind turned inward, as opposed to mind turned outward, lost in projections.
Thank you so much for all you both do to help so many. My issue has been with consistency. Are there any tools that you both use to stay on track? Consistency is a good tool to stay on track, and I don't mean that facetiously. You know what I mean? It's these practices, hearing the teachings, pondering the teachings, meditating. These things are, they only really have an effect if you make them consistent. If it becomes a consistent part of your life. So it's something, I think what helps is trial and error, that when you do practice and you see the difference when you don't, like when you don't apply the teachings to situations, or when you get consumed by certain emotional situations and you're not able to apply mindfulness, or you're not able to meditate for a long period of time, you see there's a price to it. And I think that now that you have a certain benchmark or something that you've experienced, the experience really helps you stay consistent.
If through the day, when we're, in spaces, when we're walking somewhere, or we're taking public transportation to work, we're in the car, on the train, instead of just, mindlessly looking at our phones and looking at TikTok and stuff like this, we can use our technology to listen to teachings. It's extremely refreshing to connect to teachers and teachings through the day. I mean, I do it all the time, helps me enormously,
How has years of this affected your creative life and how you collaborate? I'm not sure how it affects creative life. I really have no idea. How it affects collaboration, I mean, there's definitely, for me personally, as someone who often works with a lot of people at one time on a project, like a movie set or something like that, I find the experience and the collaborative aspect and inter-work relationships a lot easier to navigate. To put it simply. I wanted to say thank you for this session. We're going to have to wrap up really quickly because something's wrong with this computer, unfortunately, with its charge, but we're going to move really quickly. I wanted to say thank you for this session. I was recently discharged from behavioral inpatient for major depression and anxiety. This allowed me to practice mindfulness and learn new Buddhist teachings and practices. Here to clear skies of mind. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. Any advice on dealing with stress from day to day, balancing schoolwork, etc.? I mean, I can't answer that question without knowing what your practice habits are and stuff like that. You know what I mean? We get asked this all the time, but if it's asked from a point of view of someone who hasn't begun like kind of consistent daily, meditation and study, it's kind of, there's not really like a quick fix answer. You know what I mean? So if you wanted to follow up, you're welcome to. Is it good to practice before going to sleep? Meditation? Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
How do you maintain belief in meditation while feeling hopeless about the world? Meditation is not a belief. I don't believe in meditation. I practice it. You know what I mean? So it's, by practicing it, it's like doing push-ups or something. If you do push-ups, you're going to get stronger and your muscles are going to get bigger. There's no belief in that. It's just it's just something you can immediately see. I mean, so I'm not quite sure, how to, that part of your question, maintaining belief is not a problem. It's you see it, you see the results when you do it or not. Regardless of what's going on in the world. Some days are much more difficult personally and worldwide. Some are less difficult, but the practice is something that always, without a doubt, can bring a certain kind of level of focus and clarity and calming.
And it's again, what the theme we touched upon today. Remember the relative and the absolute nature of all things. As difficult as it is our karma to be in the world at this time with all the things that are happening in it. At the same time, the immutable nature, the reality of all things is never polluted like the sky. It doesn't matter what's happening in it, whether it's a hurricane, some other tornado, the sky will still go back to its kind of clear, beautiful nature, because as Buddha, nature is immutable and not really pollutable. So remembering even that through difficult times, the basis always remains Buddha nature.
Okay, last question. Is it possible to meditate on public transportation? Aren't there going to be too many
sure.
distractions? Yeah, you're probably not going to sit cross-legged in that posture that we practice, but absolutely, you can use the back to the breath technique, the thoughts, immediate thoughts that are reacting to the situation and kind of letting them go, like the cloud going into the sky. Practice mindfulness, rather than just being caught up in the story of being on the train or where you're going or things like that. Absolutely, completely possible.
There are so many different practices. Buddha gave 84,000 methods. So there could be a variety of practices. You could do Tonglen for people, old people, you look in their faces, they're suffering. You can also just recite the 4 immeasurables as a mantra and send blessing to all beings. That's also an incredibly vast practice. So not to get stuck that there's only one kind of practice, what we do on the cushion, and that's it, it's exhausted. There are as many methods as there are dispositions of being. So trying different things at different times, it's very helpful. All these practices, it's they're all consistent because they're all leading us to the same place.
We have a special guest who's we're gonna do dedication of merit right now, and he's gonna join us. I don't think he's been on camera before,
but he's very special.
Our beloved producer Nick Solidago is here in the house. Here he is. Hello, without everybody. Nick, this would not be possible. It's because of his kindness and generosity that we're able to get together and do this, and he's here today.
Yeah, Nick is what we would call a bodhisattva, someone who can dedicate his own time. For each time that we have this session, it happens because of kindness of Nick and his selflessness, that he can sit on Sunday morning and give us this time, and then post all the things and announce all the things.
Yes. So we're very grateful.
Incredibly grateful.
I'm happy that every week we've been doing this for 4 years now.
Yes.
We've consistently had hundreds of people every week. So
thank you, Nick.
I'm happy that you all can join us.
Lots of thank yous on on the Q&A comments here.
Thank you.
Always appreciate this time. I learned something new. Thank you, Nick. Lots of love from the attendees. So we'll dedicate, usually we're going to dedicate the merit. He's going to put up the dedication prayer. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
We always dedicate the merit. This is the third component of the practice. So this, whatever merit or virtue that's accumulated by us meeting here today on a Sunday and trying to, practice the Dharma, that's a meritorious activity. But again, looking through the lens of Buddhism and non-duality and our interconnectedness, we dedicate this merit for the benefit of all beings. By this merit may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thanks for coming. Thanks again. Thanks, Nick. We will see you next week.